Before I die, I want to do a TED Talk. So here goes. I've come to share an idea with you about freedom. It's an idea that if we allow ourselves the freedom to express ourselves, the freedom to be who we are, and the freedom to take our time, then we can break through to unexpected and creative solutions. I got the idea from working and living in a small community called Christiania in the heart of Copenhagen, Denmark, the land of fairy tales. The story of my community is very much like a fairy tale. 40 years ago, young hippies broke through a fence and started a social experiment that's been running ever since. It was an abandoned military base, and upon the ruins, we built a community. Today we live in colorful, often self-built houses. We have a vivid cultural scene, and our kids, as well as our nature, grow wild and free. It's not just a fairy tale story. We have our fair share of social problems, and the fact that cannabis is sold openly in one of our streets has led to numerous clashes between pushers and police, making clouds of tear gas an occasional but ordinary part of everyday life. Our most important challenge has been to withstand the pressure from numerous governments that have tried to close us down from the very beginning. The story that I want to share with you started 1 year ago when the government in power turned the tables on us by giving us an ultimatum. They told us, either you buy the land you've squatted as a community, or we'll sell it off to whoever can afford it. This ultimatum hit us where it hurt. Our very identity is pinned up on the fact that we don't own the land that we've squatted and that we're free souls. So what to do? Well, in the events that were to unfold, I saw 3 important virtues that helped us create an unexpected and creative solution, and that ended up saving our day. In our community, well, the first virtue is the freedom to express yourself. In our community, we have a big hall that we use for meetings. It's called the Grey Hall. It's also used for concerts, and there have been concerts by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Bob Dylan, Lenny Kravitz, amongst many others. It's also where we host our annual free Christmas banquet for those who don't have anywhere to be at Christmas. But when we're under pressure, this is where we meet. So we met, and people were really worried. Were our enemies finally going to close us down by selling us out to private property? It was frustrating. Now, facing an ultimatum like this for a community like ours is difficult because we rely on consensus decision-making. Consensus decision-making means that everybody has a say, and in principle, everybody has to give their consent before you can make a decision. There's around 650 inhabitants in our community, so there are lots of opinions to be taken into consideration. Imagine if all of us in this room were under pressure and we all had to be heard and all had to give our consent before we could take a decision. Now, if you want consensus decision-making to work, you have to be really good at allowing each other the freedom of expressing yourself. And you have to be good at listening, because solutions can come from anywhere in the room. At one of our meetings, a gentleman called the Swede, he's a bit of a rowdy character. He grabbed the microphone and he chose to express himself freely. He said, "I think it's so rude that they've given us this ultimatum, and it's so rude that they've given it to us with such a short notice. They just want to sell us out and close us down, and we shouldn't allow them that privilege. Let's close down ourselves." And everybody laughed. The idea was a little bit absurd. Christiania is one of Denmark's top 3 tourist attractions, together with the Little Mermaid and with Tivoli. Thousands of tourists come to our community every day, and it's not just the tourists, it's also the citizens of Copenhagen who use our area to relax and hang out. We have an open freetown where you can come as you are and do whatever you please as long as you don't bother anyone. So the idea of closing down was laughable. But where there's laughter, there is hope. And as we joked with the idea, the tension started to take off and people got creative and the idea actually gained momentum. Let's close down and see what comes out of it. So we closed down. Allowing each other the freedom of expressing yourself freely can give yourself unexpected and creative solutions, even laughable solutions. So this brings me on to the next virtue that I saw, and this is the freedom to be who you are. Now, the gentleman who suggested we close down is called the Swede. I told you, he's a rowdy character. He's the kind of person you'll find sitting outside the convenience store, having a beer or two, or three, or four, together with friends and strangers. A rowdy character, but he doesn't really bother anyone. He's a man of few means, and if our community was to be sold out to those who could afford it, surely he wouldn't be able to afford it. Now, I think generally we have a tendency to ignore, to exclude, or even kick out the people who can come up with creative and unexpected solutions. Now, I told you that he wouldn't be able to afford his house. That's because the Swede has the kind of view that money can't buy. As we talked in these meetings, we had this feeling about his view and about the whole thing, and we were feeling like it should continue this way. I mean, this should really be a view that money can't buy. If the Swede were to buy his house, let's say he actually could afford it, and he fell late on his mortgage, or if he couldn't afford it, we'd have had to kick him out. Now, the Swede can't afford it because he is the man he is, and he has the right to be who he is and still have a home. If we had kicked him out, we wouldn't have got his brilliant suggestion. Now, the suggestion that the Swede came with was a joke. It wasn't completely thought through. It was a little bit laughable, but it gave us hope. And it gave us something to do in a situation where we were under pressure. And then it gave us one more thing. It gave us time. And that's the third virtue I want to talk about, the freedom to take your time. Like the snail, I feel we should really hurry up slowly sometimes. It worries me, this constant pace that everything has to be done in. It's like sometimes when we are under pressure, we think we have to do more and do faster, and we end up enforcing the very things that got us under pressure. By suggesting that we close down, the Swede created an unexpected break in our lives that gave us time. Now, I told you, our community is visited by thousands of people every day. This gives us a constant hustle and bustle, a ceaseless movement of people in and out and around, and it's a really, really beautiful thing. But putting it on pause was like we could stop everything around us and still be free to move ourselves. So we moved, and we talked, and we moved each other. Now, I wonder what it would be like if I told you that I'm a little bit under pressure here, that the clock is ticking and maybe I need to take myself some time. My point is, sometimes you have to close down to open up. Sometimes we have to hurry up slowly. Now, I've mentioned three virtues to you: the freedom to express yourself, the freedom to take your time, and the freedom to be who you are. Now, if you have these three elements, you're allowing yourself the opportunity of coming up with creative and unexpected solutions. In our case, the solution was to share our freedom. Closing down our community meant turning away people at our gates. And turning people away, those of us who are manning the gates, had to talk to people. If someone comes all the way from Australia to see this fairy tale-like Freetown that's open and you can do what you want, and it's closed. You have to do some explaining. And also to the citizens of Copenhagen who came, and we had to turn them away, and they were like, I just came to relax and let my hair down. What was most disheartening was to see how many of Copenhagen's homeless and socially challenged people that we had to turn away. They come to our community every day because they can find someone to talk to, or because they can find a place where they can sit around without anybody passing judgment on them. I saw a gentleman talking to a tree once. It seemed to do him some good. Connecting with nature. Yeah. The common denominator for all of these people is that they come to our community to feel free. Free to do as they please, free to be who they are, free to take their time, and free to express themselves. Now, when we closed down our community, we wanted to show the world what it would be like if our area was privately owned. If we'd put up fences and do not trespass signs, and you had to pay a fee or ring a doorbell to come in. But standing at the gates, I started to realize that it was not just a message to people outside. It was a message to ourselves. And this message was, you can't own this place. It belongs to everybody. And at the meetings, more and more of us talked about this, and we could feel this movement of people that had been struck, that had been closed. We could feel this movement of people that had suddenly been stopped. It was like it wasn't the same anymore. It was like we missed their vibration. We missed those people who come every day and help us create and invent this place. To me, it was like we came eye to eye with our purpose. And this purpose was not to have a place where we, the inhabitants, could be free, but it was to share that freedom with everyone. Now, with this sense of purpose, magic started happening. At one of the meetings, an elderly lady grabbed the microphone, and she said, "What if we buy the area, but refuse to own it?" And people were like, "Is that possible? Can you really do that? That sounds very cool." And she said, "What if we take all the deeds and throw them up into the air?" Whoa. That was inspiring. And in an instant, it was like the whole Grey Hall was turned into a great big sandbox where everybody was playing with this idea and seeing what we could make of it. And we ended up constructing a foundation that could own the area. Our community would be represented on the board, and the rest of the board members would be citizens broadly respected from the Kingdom of Denmark. The important thing was, even though we're paying for it, none of us get a deed. So we don't own it. Now, we took our time, and by now we were past the government deadline. But we discussed the pros and the cons of the idea. Not everybody was completely enthusiastic. Some people felt we shouldn't let other people have influence on the board. Some people felt we shouldn't at all negotiate with the government. We should just stand our ground and dig trenches like we've done before. But as we talked and talked, more and more people started giving their consent. And in the end, the person chairing the meeting spoke in the microphone, and he said, "Is there anyone who's against us buying the area free in the way so that we don't own it? Speak now or forever hold your peace." And for a while, all you could hear was the sound of silence. Then people started clapping and cheering. And having taken this decision, we could communicate to Copenhagen and to the citizens of the world and say, "We're going to buy this area free, but we refuse to own it. If you want your share of freedom, come and get it." And people came. They filled up the streets outside our community, and when the streets were filled, they started tearing down the makeshift fences that we built. And as the fences came tumbling down, people came pouring in. And they were met with kisses and hugs, and everybody came to express themselves and to be who they were. And they took their time, and the celebrations went on to the early hours of the morning. There was much rejoicing. I would like to say that we lived happily ever after, but this is not a fairy tale story. It's something that happened about a year ago, and it gave me the idea that if we allow ourselves the freedom to express ourselves freely, the freedom to be who we are, and the freedom to take our time, we can come up with creative and unexpected solutions to whatever challenges we all face. I often think of what ideas and creativity lie in the minds and hearts of the people that we usually ignore. By allowing other people to express themselves more freely, we ourselves can express ourselves more freely. Have you ever sat in a meeting and had a half-thought-through idea that you wanted to put on the table because you thought it could really contribute to something, but you end up not putting it forward because you're afraid of sounding foolish? I can't help think how many genius, or maybe just half-genius ideas never make it to the table because of this. Now, I think we really need to cherish and enlarge the places where we can feel free. And I'd like to ask all of you to take a moment to think about where you feel free, where you feel that you can express yourself freely, where you feel that you can be who you are, and take your time. This place may be at home with your family, it may be at your office or where you work, it may be in your ghetto, it may be in your community, in your suburb, it may be somewhere inside. But when you have an idea of what or where that place is, take your freedom and share it. Thank you very much.